Howdy, y'all. So, I want to talk about the Hunters Guild Red Hood. It's over and gone, but that doesn't mean we can't learn something from it. From a banger of a one-shot to an alright series that ended up in Jump's infamous Under 19 club. What went wrong? Is Shonen Jump being too harsh and quick to cancel a new series? For those who don't know, the Red Hood manga was the winner of the 2020 Golden Future Cup, which is a yearly one-shot contest Shonen Jump runs, where the winner is given a chance to run a series, usually a series version of their one-shot. The Red Hood one-shot is great, and its premise actually lends itself pretty well to a long-running series, but it all came tumbling down. The popular opinion is that Jump canceled the Red Hood because nobody in Japan was reading it and ignored the fact that it was actually getting decent attention over here in the West, but I don't really think that's the case. I think the problem actually lies in the shaky foundation it built during its transition from a short story into a long series. Let's break down the premises. Premises? One shot first. So, we're taking the grim fairy tales and making them a shonen-style manga. We got a boy named Valau living in a small wooded village that is being attacked by a werewolf. The village pools together their money to hire a hunter from the Hunters Guild. Oh no, the Hunters Guild only sent a little girl named Grim to come save them because they were too poor. Psych, turns out that the guild hunters make themselves look like kids to create a false sense of security. She ends up being a capable hunter and stops the werewolf using specialized hunting devices to turn the wolf's strengths into weaknesses. Then Valau decides to join up and become a hunter as well, to prevent what happened in his village from happening to any others. Now that is a banger of a setup if I've ever heard one. We go around exterminating monsters, saving people's lives using our wits and tools we've created to take advantage of all these monsters. Sort of like Attack on Titan vibes, but with like a fairy tale setting, which is perfect because fairy tales are absolutely capable of carrying a bleak tone. That was their origin, the grim fairy tale. But if I take what the series became during the actual series portion of it, and I reread the premise, it has changed. And in my opinion, for the worse, but let's get into that. So the series premise goes like this. We're taking the grim fairy tales and making them a shonen-style manga. We've got a boy named Valau living in a small wooded village that is being attacked by a werewolf. The village pools together their money to hire a hunter from the Hunters Guild. Oh no, the Hunters Guild only sent them a little girl named Grim to come save them because they were too poor. Psych, turns out she just looks weak, but can transform into a stronger version of herself for 3 hours per day. She stops the werewolves using guns and bombs within her 3-hour time limit. Valau helps with his special axe and smart planning. Then, the big bad wolf and a witch show up. Turns out there's a bunch of strong monsters called the Red List, and they're gonna band together and take out the guild. Valau decides to join the guild, but it turns out that Valau was actually created as a part of a big conspiracy by the village's mayor to be a hero that can't be controlled by destiny / the guild. Now, this immediately changes the entire texture of this setting and its vibe. So now instead of a story about banding together and protecting the innocent from hordes of terrifying monsters, this becomes a fight between two factions, the Hunters Guild and the Red List. This is a change to everything at its fundamental core. Let's break it down. First, the entire way that fights go down is different. Magic and curses become like a power system. The only way to get a curse is from a witch. So witches who are being hunted curse the hunters, and oops, sometimes the hunter actually becomes an even bigger threat than they were before your curse. How exactly is this power system supposed to scale? Would our main character just get cursed by some dumb witch and get a power-up? Even if you execute this power system well, it still has issues in a longer-term story. See, Grim in the one-shot was a character that uses gadgets and her wits. She's still able to fight even when she's not in her powered-up form. And most of her fight, she only goes into that form when absolutely necessary. But this new system turns her into a discount All Might with the ability to turn into a larger, significantly stronger version of herself for a limited time. One of the good things that happened was showing that other wolves move into the territory as soon as the first one dies. This creates more action and shows that the world really is relentless with the monsters everywhere, and that's a great direction to take the story. What is not a great direction, however, is the immediate lack of danger that the big bad wolf and his witch friend give off. There's no danger. The author is clearly trying to do the thing of showing the tree we have to eventually climb in order to stop the bad guys. This is usually a good idea to show where we need to go, But the situation is so mishandled. So he shows up and he's like, bummer, my kids are dead, and then tries to leave. And then they just decide to burn the village down for kicks. It's not even like, why not just have him be mad about his son's deaths if you're just going to have him burn down the village anyway? But this leads into probably the biggest fumble in my opinion, which is the drop that the red list is on the move. Now, this is actually a big issue because now the monsters are an organized group. I mentioned that changes everything before, and I won't repeat myself here too much, but youch. The next change is also unfortunate. Most of the villagers actually live through their village being destroyed and burned down, but there really isn't a reason to have them live. One of the things pushing Valau forward is supposed to be the tragedy of what happened and his resolve to stop it from happening to anyone else. But it's kind of hard to take his resolve seriously when the most that happened after some of the world's strongest villains showed up and burned down some buildings and kill, less than a quarter of the people there? Wouldn't it have been stronger emotionally if the entire village received a tragedy? Valau's big tragedy motivating him forward is weak, but unfortunately this is only the first thing that will be making Valau's character flatter. So after the not-so-tragedy, we move on and see the world, which is turning out to be pretty interesting. We ride crabs around and there's giants everywhere. And we finally, at chapter 7, meet another memorable character, Debonair, a huge, strong woman who was cursed basically into becoming the Human Torch. She's very charismatic, and we got another interesting character that we can care about now. The next big misstep, the mayor, it turns out to be alive, and he planned everything, all of the things that happened. Now, the meta angle is a tough one to do correctly. Thankfully, the premise of fairy tales is fairly lenient and would lend itself well to a meta narrative. But the way it's executed here does take even more away from our main character, Valau, and he really can't afford to become even flatter now after he was already becoming flat. You see, now he's just a puppet created for the specific purpose of what the mayor is planning. And this takes away all agency from any of Valau's decisions. It makes him a passive protagonist, just coasting through whatever the world is doing to him. He didn't decide to do this. The mayor made it so that he would decide it. The main character is the lifeblood of a shonen-style manga. And when your main character is being torn down and flattened chapter by chapter, you are doing irreparable damage to anything you can do with them in the future. So now with Valau being reduced to what he is, we are sitting here after 190 pages with only two real interesting characters that we care about, Grimm and Debonair. These being the only interesting characters to root for going into a new mini-arc about training is clumsy, especially when neither of those two are being trained. There was just not enough conflict or roadblocks to really pull out emotions, reveal inner characters in anyone until we started the exam in chapter 10. When we finally get shown a bunch of interesting character designs and promise we can care about them, and then we spend the next few chapters of the exam, we're fleshing them out, we're getting to know everyone. We even start to see Valau take action and have clever solutions. They're trying to build him back up, but it's taken too long. We finished the exam, but it wasn't enough. So it was time to receive the news. Cancellation was assured. There were 3 good chapters for the opening, and 5 chapters of the exam arc. But in between was 6 chapters that amounted to very little. That's almost half of the total number of chapters. After the exam concluded, the story accelerates to some kind of finish. I'm not going to hold the sloppy finish against the story, though, since you got to do what you can in order to finish up in just 4 chapters. This kind of story had a very big potential from the premise, but clumsy execution that just didn't hit promised marks. The series version seemed to be emulating another title in Shonen Jump, but the wrong one? It was seemingly emulating My Hero Academia. It had a meek but smart main character, a strong, transforming for 3 hours a day hero to show the kid their inner strength and take them into the organization to stop the bad things in the world. But it wouldn't work. That formula is not meant for this kind of a setting. All in all, it was a one-shot that promised an Attack on Titan-esque humanity versus the monsters world using fairy tales. But we ended up with a series that came across more as My Hero Academia, but slower and fewer characters, so no, Shonen Jump was not being too harsh or ignoring the Western audience. If you read through almost 400 pages of manga, and only about half of those pages are engaging, half of what's in there is actually interesting, it's the author that failed. You can only hope to pick yourself up and learn the lessons that this failure teaches. But what are the lessons to learn from the failure of the Hunters Guild Red Hood? Well, the biggest one is to take extra care in your main character. Don't do anything to tear them down. Let them be somebody we can root for and can take charge. The other is to understand what makes your premise stand out. See what makes your premise special and really focus in on that instead of trying to use a formula from another successful story. Or at least if you do want to use a formula from a successful story, use a formula that fits. Thank you for watching. This video I'm mostly doing to learn lessons about why some stories don't make it, all in an effort to improve maybe my own writing or learn some lessons and maybe some takeaways. I may try to revisit the Under 19 Club sometime and see what other lessons can be learned from them, but we'll see. And as a quick aside, I would like to add that I hold nothing against the Red Hood. I'm actually a big fan, and I'm probably going to keep following the work of this mangaka. His art is great, his designs are phenomenal. His main area that he needs to work on is carving out his own writing style for a longer series. He seems to have gotten a handle on it near the end with the exam arc, but it was just a little bit too late. I just hope he learned from this and can make his next one even better.